Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Got Will here today. Just getting myself set up here. Bear with me just a sec. Couple pre-submitted questions. Oh, great. Got a bunch of people joining. Caitlin, can you go ahead and get the pre-submitted questions into the public chat for me?
Absolutely.
I don't see. Okay, I think that one is from Lisa. Is that right?
Yes.
Make sure you're posting to everyone, not just the host and panelists.
Sorry about that. Hold on, give me 1 second.
Hey, Lisa, we got you. So we have your question here. As part of our biannual systems access review and decisions, supervisors are asked to review and approve or deny access to 3 of our systems. In April 22, I worked with support to overhaul the current process, which included group user actions available from a new dashboard. Everything has gone smoothly. However, I have new user from the actions are available, but when clicked, nothing happens. Likely, if this is user specific and they have actions, it's likely they don't have permissions. They write permissions to run the flows. Oh, looks like we lost her. So if you have actions that show a user, but nothing happens when they run it, that is likely a permissions issue, but we would need logs to know with certainty what's going on. Not just because you can see an action doesn't technically mean you have the ability to run it. There's a difference between showing actions and having permissions to run something. So my advice would be, if you get that, first thing I would try is to, if that user attempts the action, would be to look in the logs to see if you get any kind of errors. And it would be to look at and confirm if the permissions that user has are equal to the permissions that a working user might have. So you could check to see if they're part of the same groups. Compare and contrast a user that works and a user that doesn't work, because that does sound like a permissions issue if you're not seeing anything. Okay. All right, MRA, I'll get you. So we are beginning the stages of designing a relationship onboarding application. The relationship will be based on a person who may have multiple accounts, each with their own distinct data points. My inclination is to base this on a case data structure due to the need to move freely between states and easily report on the overall progress. However, when all potential data points are taken into consideration, there will be several hundred of them, which I'm inclined to split into smaller structures to make searches and maintenance easier. I guess you could still nest data types together.
Okay.
So you could create simple data structures and then that have different like is this a one how is this a one-to-many, like an unknown one-to-many relationship that you might have between accounts? Okay.
Yes. So you may come in and say you want to open 2 IRAs, 3 investment trusts, and a charitable trust. I might come in and say I just want an IRA.
Okay. How many? What's the volume that you expect here? Is it hundreds, thousands, millions?
Hundreds.
Okay. I think that I probably use an entity model for this, where I would do something like this. Folder here. You could also use simple data structures. So here's a model I would like. Let me create a case just to create since you're talking about using a case here, which would be, I don't know, main object or something. I'm just going to put a single string on it.
Okay.
And then I would create, where is it at? Where are we at? I would create a data type. Maybe I would create an entity. This would be called like, I don't know, investment type or something like that, right? and it would have whatever properties I would need. Oh, well, I can't do that, can I? And then what I can do is create different, actually, I could have a type. Let me actually put a type here, excuse me. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather today if I'm not firing on all cylinders. Of course, this is like the most packed house we've had in a long time, and I'm probably going to do a terrible job, so I apologize. But in the case data structure, we can control. What we could do is build a flow. Something really quick here. Let me create a case, which is loan main object. Just call this thing test one. And if I look at that, add, yeah, so there is, let me what I'm going to do, I'm just trying to figure out how to add one of these things I just added, and it's not showing up for some reason. Don't understand why. Maybe because those are folders. Either way, we could build a flow. Let me just do this. We could build a flow and we can put in our folder types of investments. One of the nice things it gives us is like the ability to do some kind of like a roll up type of report. So really quickly, I'm going to put together a really simple create case. I'm not actually going to put any buttons on the main form. I'm going to find my create case step under user defined types, case entity, loan main object, create. And then under my normal entities, I'm going to find my investment type. And I'm going to create. And what I'll do is I'm going to copy that and just create two of these. So a case is a folder type in our world. So I'm just going to set this up, which means it can hold, it uses its parent and child like folder IDs between entities. So it can have things inside of it, right? You can put comment, you can think about these custom entities, which might be the type of loan as if it's a document or something, or a comment, something that you might be more familiar with. I'm just going to put some garbage text in here. Then I'm going to do to create. So the folder ID, I'm going to pass in the ID that comes out of this create case step. It passes out the newly created folder ID. And that's going to be, I'm going to use the folder ID as like the foreign key relationship, even though it's not a proper foreign key. This is how decisions interprets these things. And I'm going to put a type here, constant. I'll just call this like mutual fund or something. I'm going to copy this step. And I'm going to put in, actually need to set a name here too, don't I? Just call this, portfolio or something. Portfolio 1. And the type here would be, I guess I'll name this portfolio. And investment type here, name, I'll just name this mutual fund. Just trying to get, I'm just going to run this so I can show. So here's my flow. I'm going to run my flow. here's my empty form. I'm going to submit this, and boom, I get a new case. If I click into that case, then I have two things in here that I can, a mutual fund and a portfolio. Those are two entities that now live in this folder. I can add as many of those as I want, and they each have a type associated with them. So one of the things which is neat that I can do from a reporting standpoint is I'm going to go create a report of all my investment, all that and that investment objects. So I'm going to come down to entities, user find types, entities, and find investment type here. And I'm going to add, entity name and type. And then what I'm going to do under filters is come to in folder. Sorry, no, not in folder. I'm going to add a joining containing folder piece to my report here. So then what I can do is I can take the data from the case. So I can say in entity name. Then I should be able to add extension data and add my, here's my case entity, loan main object. Now what I have is the ability to build a roll-up report for all of these things very easily. So I could look at all portfolio, I could look at all mutual funds accounts in a particular, and I can roll up. Like I don't have any, did I add, there's string one, there's that custom string field I had. So now I have investment types in folders extending or attached to the case data type. Okay. Now, all I have to do is make the flows deposit the right type of deposit or edit, fetch from or write into, add into the folder. Like for this case folder, I have, and of course we can edit this page, right? We can have a custom page here that shows these entities in whatever detail that we want. But that gives us a nice, easy way to maintain the relationship between the case and then the different sort of investments or whatever that each case might relate to. And it provides some nice, easy wins from a reporting standpoint as you need to start making dashboards and management user interfaces for this type of thing.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand this. So in my particular situation, the case would have information about Will Pedersen, yep, name, address, social security number, all that kind of basic stuff that applies to Will Pedersen, the person, not the, yep, accounts. Okay. And then in the accounts, so for mutual fund, I would have potentially 100 fields. I know you can't make 100 fields in the lunch and learn. I'm not asking that. I just want to make sure that we would be able to view and report on those in a more pleasing manner than, that would give me an overview of the accounts that were there. But if I needed to see the detail of any particular account, I would be able to do that.
An account is the case, or account is the
mutual fund. So the mutual fund might have 100 fields in it, like, yeah, beneficiaries, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking additionally, because some of these types of accounts will have beneficiaries, maybe yet another structure that would store the beneficiaries associated with the case, sure, and then tie them back to each type of account that they belong on. Sure.
You could, yeah, likely, then you're probably talking about creating a simple data structure and making a list of that simple data structure in the investment type that I created here called beneficiaries or something. You can control this view. There's no issue with the amount of columns here that you might have. And then this is just a normal decisions page. So you might have on the left-hand side here, like a report of all the all the investment types or whatever that this account currently has, and then some form-based detailed view on the right-hand side that is dependent, that changes based on your selection as you click into a particular account. That's just an option. It could be just a whole page of reports, or you could have a parent and child report based on, or multiple child reports if you have multiple of these sort of like data relationships like beneficiaries you were just mentioning. You have a lot of control over how you could construct that user interface. But there's not an issue with the number of columns added, which kind of makes mapping probably a bit of a pain when you have to do those flow builds, but there's not a technical problem with that.
Okay, so then my next question is, I understand what you're saying, but I too don't feel very well today, and I'm going to sleep before I do this. So when I run into trouble, am I best to put in just a support ticket, or is there some other route where someone can help me work through the details of this?
Yeah, do this actually. So I'd like you to work more closely with Caitlin, who's on the call right now going forward.
Okay.
And so you could work with Caitlin to and Caitlin can help getting access to the right resources there. This isn't really a good support request.
Okay, I didn't think it was. That's why I didn't go that route.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I will see how far I can get, and then I will stay in touch with Caitlin if I need extra assistance.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right. So Caitlin tells me that Radley is up next. What's up, Radley? What you got?
Hey, good morning, Will. So I'm just curious how the archive settings work. So when I delete, a flow or a form or whatever I'm deleting, it goes into some sort of deleted queue, and then after some period of time, it should not be there anymore.
Correct.
I understand that right? So, yep, I have the screen that you're showing. I have that up, and I'm looking at it, and I currently have mine set to 1 day.
Okay.
I want to prove that it's working, but I have things that were deleted, weeks, if not a month ago, that are still there. So I'm just curious what I'm doing wrong.
So you should have to turn on, I believe, for type. So let's assume it's a custom type. So I think I can select my investment type here, and I can specify a certain timeline here. So this is that entity I just created in 10 days. So nothing gets deleted by default. There's been some changes here over the years. So we don't delete it until you specify it should be deleted. You are marking it archived, but there's not a configuration to also remove it. Now, this should say that when I mark my investment type deleted, I'm going to set the archive date to 10 days in the future. That's what this setting should say.
Okay.
Right. And then when that date is current, there's a thread job that runs, which we could look at here. If I come into system administration, system tools, event viewer, and I look at my thread jobs, there should be, let me see if I can find it. There should be archive entities job. This is currently set to run tomorrow morning at 12, or actually it's supposed to run tomorrow afternoon at 12:10. So we don't delete anything until you tell us to. I think is probably the miss here. Archiving is logical until you specify it to actually do a delete for it, to actually do like a removal for you. Might be one way to phrase that.
Okay. So I have to specify if I want to delete forms or flows or rules, I have to specify each of those.
Oh, like these are no, that's going to be a type named element registration.
Okay.
Element registration will remove these things for you. Yeah, all of the designed entities.
Yeah.
Those things are their type name is element registration.
Okay.
If you're trying to clean up just kind of like garbage from development,
exactly,
then this should take care of that for you.
Okay. That's what I needed. Thank you, Will. Appreciate it.
You bet. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to, I don't know because I've never tried it, like if it will retroactively do it, just as a note. So if it doesn't, we could give you some cleanup queries to just run some manual deletes on your database. Delete from element registration where archived equals 1 and, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But this should work. I just don't know in detail. I don't know with certainty if it will retroactively apply for you.
Okay. That sounds great. Thank you.
All right, Alex. Hey, man. Long time no talk, sir. What you got for us today?
Well, so first off, hey, Will, hope you're getting better soon. The first is a comment about the first question. I have something similar going on. And when we're talking about like actions, are we talking about like possibly like assignment forms?
That's a fair question. I guess let me see here. If Lisa is back, I could give her the opportunity to chat. I was assuming this was an entity action, not an assigned form action, which is an assumption on my part.
Okay, because I mean, with assignment forms, I'm having a similar activity where the end user will like click on the thing and the action menu will come up, but when you click the action menu, nothing happens. And
Oh, really?
yeah, so no, and I'm working that with the support, people, but the comment I wanted to make, if that's what she was talking about, is that, I mean, from a permissions point of view, like I have a situation where the same user will get the same type of flow approval, and one time it'll work and another time it won't. So, I just was, wanted to point that out with regards to permissions, because, with permissions, one would think that I get the same behavior all the time.
Correct. You would expect that, yes.
But no, my question for today is about, I can't remember what it was about, action something or others. On the assignment setup. Apparently we can create these action, I think they're action definitions or
Action outcome rules, something like that, probably.
something along those lines. Yeah, and I just was kind of wondering, I heard that was you could use these things to be able to like nudge a flow forward from outside the actual flow kind of thing, and that
You can, yeah.
kind of became interesting to me, like in the sense of, like, for example, if someone mysteriously becomes sick and they've got something that they need to do, could that be used as an administrative task to basically move that along?
That, yeah, it absolutely could be. So let's see if we have our process form assignment response. What a wonderful name for a step. What a wonderful intuitive name. Process form. Yeah, here you go. Completing assignments using API. I'll put this in the chat. This is the doc that kind of walks you through how to use those things to do what you're talking about.
Okay.
Now, if you wanted to code this in to be so that you could have it prepped ahead of time, then yes, these action definitions will work for you. You can add them, and then you get outcome names. I would say like we would call these like complete API or something like that. And then you have these toggles here. What they originally were added for is the ability to like do group selection. So maybe almost like if you have a queue of approvals that can get pretty dense, and you want a user to be able to group select a bunch of assignments and move them forward. That's what we sort of added these for originally. And then we added the ability to call them as an API. So if you add these, you get a custom outcome path called complete API that could go downstream for you automatically. And then in this document, it shows you how to use, how to set that up. And then there's all this API stuff. This is kind of assignment. Oh, they're calling they're calling that directly. Well, either, but how about I not, let me go. That's kind of a dumb document. Integration, internal services, assignment, and then I'm going to find this step called process form assignment response. Now this won't be searchable, just as a note. And if you can fetch and feed this step, the assignment ID and the response, which is the case specific spelling of that complete API name, then you could build a scheduled job or some other flow that could fetch all of the appropriate assignments, loop through them, pass the assignment ID and the right name in, and then move a series of unrelated flows to the next defined step. If that makes sense.
So I could also basically have a right-click event on an administrative screen, which would basically have a list of all the assignments, and right-click on it and call a flow that would call this step process form assignment response 1, and be able to use that complete API path.
You actually will get, you don't even, it's a little, if in that example, you don't need the separate flow to call. Let me just assign this really quickly and I'll show you what I mean. It might be just as simple as adding an action visibility rule to hide this from non-admin users. If I run that flow really quick, I just set it to be an assignment. And if I go to my inbox, there's the flow I just created. And if I right click, you'll see complete API is in the action context menu for me. And I can control if it shows up as an individual or a group or neither. but that will actually make it move down the outcome path, with or without some sort of commentary. I can configure if this comment box is needed or not.
Right.
And so I could just hide that. Yeah, you can see my flow is not appropriately defined. But I could just hide that complete API response. Oops, let me run that flow once or twice to get some more examples. So I can have this complete API, and I could hide this from non-admin users. I don't actually have to go through the effort of building up the other flow and calling it via API. Like we've had customers who've used this where they make a call into another external system, and they want that external system to be able to cancel the original assignment at any time. And so they'll use these these assignment definitions, these action definition things. And then they'll build a separate flow that can take in an assignment ID and can take in the outcome path name, and then allow that external system to create REST calls into the workflow server to get rid of those assignments. But if you just want a administrative level dashboard for users to progress assignments without having to move through the actual form itself, the action surfaces on the assignment automatically for you.
Okay, so just a quick clarification. So imagine I have an approval form that just basically says approve or reject. And so that has two outcome paths. I can basically add these definitions, like called admin approve and admin reject.
Exactly.
Would basically allow me to right click, say the admin approve, admin reject, and then actually point them along the same path. Like like the outcome, when a user hits approve, it goes into a subflow, a run subflow. Yep. So my admin thing could just also go into the
exactly,
and providing perhaps different comments or that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. That's the use case for sure.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet. Okay. Then you said it was anonymous was next. So how can you overwrite the default item in a radio box? For example, the default item is yes, but when selecting no and saving the form, the radio box selection is still set to yes. I'm not sure who the anonymous attendee is, but what does saving the form mean? This example. Let me put this in the chat so everyone can see it. And while we're answering that, Jeremy's got a question here. I'm storing file references in a case folder. And what's the difference between delete file and delete file reference entity? So file reference entity, there's like two pieces. There's a file on the file system, and then there's the file reference entity, which is like a decisions entity similar to those. I'll let you talk, Jeremy, if you want to ask a question, which is similar to that investment entity I just created for the previous case example. And that entity allows me to give a portal context, like a folder location in decisions, to that file. So I can tell decisions to delete the file off of the file system, or I can tell decisions to delete the sort of like relational to object, the file reference entity, and not delete the file. It's arguably, it's kind of unnecessary to provide both to you, but that's what the difference is. You've got like a database struct table, which is the file reference entity itself, and then that thing points to or has like an ID or a reference to the file on the file system. You can actually see these in the database. I think file reference entity is the actual table name.
So if I wanted to delete both, like in my thing, I'm trying to like purge unnecessary documents after a certain amount of time. So I need to delete the file off the storage, but I don't know that I need to keep the reference to that if the file's no longer there.
Yeah, that's probably, you probably have to do both. Yeah, because I don't know. I don't know if deleting the file reference entity does also delete the file or not. It probably does. And if it doesn't, it probably should, just to be clear. I just don't know with certainty if it does. I just know that because of how a file reference entity is kind of two objects together, this file object and then our entity object, it gives you the opportunity to delete them independently, which is kind of dumb.
Okay, and then so on that, in the flow steps, under the integration internal services for file reference, there's also there's a couple different steps for that. There's delete and delete files. I don't know if those correlate to the same right-click actions, or which one I should be using to this fully purge that file from the system.
The file reference service, we've got delete and delete file, don't we? Yeah. I can get you an answer on that. I don't know in the moment what the actual difference is between these two things. ID, they look, it's difficult to tell them apart. So I'll need to get an answer for you on that, Jeremy. I don't know. I need to run a couple tests. But yeah, I think I would probably just use the delete file reference, but we could, I mean, I guess, can I quickly put together a test here? I need to create a file reference entity. Let me see. So let me do this. I think I can change. I think we had it change document settings. Create a flow. Set up process folder step. Add file references to, that's not what I want. Add file references to folder step. Current folder, put some garbage text in. References, I will say build array, constant. Oh, right. I'm gonna need a form for that, of course. Here, picker create, regular button, file upload, type of file reference, garbage text for my data name. Okay, and then I will file references. I'm going to change that to select from flow ASDF. I'm just going to pass in a couple of these really quick. And folder ID is from process folder ID. Okay. And so if I run this, there's my form. I'll select the file. Now, if I look in my folder, I've got two file references, and I should have an action to delete file and delete file reference entity. Now, let me look in my here, search for reference. There's file reference entity. Okay. Does it give me the path here? Just the reference ID. Now that I'm going to be able to think about store files these days. Logs, decision, storage, primary. Load data. The reference is 7. 745 F7022. Okay, here's a file on the file system. I see it. So I'm going to do file reference entity. I didn't delete it. Sorry, just a sec. That didn't delete my file either. Okay, so delete and file reference entity doesn't seem to delete the file. So let me run this flow again. So here's my new folder. Now I have to find the file again. I have to locate it because it's saved by its name. Oh, it's creating all right, so 15E. Right, so flow data 15E8440. That's that. Okay. So if I come here and I delete file, it will remove the file. Okay, so deleting the file does delete the file. Delete file references entity does not delete the file. So let me run this, but if we look at our flow, does our flow tell us? That's not where I put those steps at. Let's create a new flow. Which is which? This is kind of an example of us kind of not doing enough work for you, that you have to think about what thing you're deleting. Not in love with the fact that we give you both options here. So delete, I bet this delete file is the one. So if I come back, duplicate my tab again, run my flow. Okay, boom. There's this one. If I update my query, there's my new one there. So I'm going to copy that, and that is 1, 1. We find it 1, 1. There's 1, 1, and I'm going to go and find this flow here, and I'm going to pass in that ID. On this, and that deleted the file. So I know delete's probably delete file reference entity, but delete file behaves the same as the right click delete file, if that helps at all. Delete file. So the delete file step is delete file. So I think delete file reference entity is probably something completely different than what you see in those integration service steps. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. You'll have to do both, I guess. But you can get the file reference ID out of the file reference entity object. So if you fetch your file reference entities, and then you could, in your loop, use the appropriate delete steps. Probably just a delete entity step is sufficient to delete the file reference entity if you want to get rid of that. We have a generic delete step that allows you to specify a type of entity and pass an ID in to mark it deleted. Okay, so moving on here, save as in. So here's back to the question, which is how can you override the default item in a radio box? For example, the default item is yes, but when selecting no, saving the form, the radio box selection is set back to yes. So this is save button on the form. It updates the data structure. Okay, so this is like some kind of assigned form that you can loop back onto. So save action on form. Let me quickly get this set up. So here's a flow. And here's a form. A new regular. And here is a radio button list and a button. Now the radio button list is going to be type, it'll be RL, and the type will be string. Okay, and selected RL. It's fine. So if I do, so I have RL, which I'll do as yes and no, and selected RL, which I'll default to yes. So if I leave this as is and debug, that's going to give me selected yes. Okay. That's what I'm going to do is edit my form, add another button, which is I'm assuming what we're doing here, which is save. And I'm just going to use a create data step here to mimic the save behavior you're referring to. I'll run this, I'll say, I'll change this to no, and I'll click save, and I'll come back and it's back to yes, right? So what I would do here is something like this. I would declare a variable before my form called selected RL item, something like that. And I would default this thing to yes. Then what I would do is the output, I wouldn't necessarily do rename. I wouldn't do rename. I would change the output of that to change value. And I would change selected RI item. And I would change the input to be selected RI item. And then if I debug this, I set it to yes. I'm going to click no and click save. And that came back. That wasn't supposed to happen. Hold on. Selected RI item is yes. You might not be able to do a static list with this. Selected RI item. Change value selected RI item. It should work. Oh, it's a string. That should be. I should be able to update this. It should be working. Let me do this. Okay, I think this is a bug. You should be able to do this. This should work. You should be able to set the selected item just using this change value pattern. I think this is a bug of some sort. Oh, no, I see. That's why I wasn't passing it out. One moment. And I shouldn't need this here. Sorry, this will work. Boom. I'm gonna change it to yes, save it. It'll be no. Save is still renamed, so I need to change. That's right. Yep, selected RI item. Come on, this will work. Change it to yes, save. It's yes. Yeah. So you need to, I don't know if you can, you might be able to use static. I'm not sure if you can use static or not, but you can definitely use an input here. And then you need to have the ability for the workflow to change the value of the input. So you can't define it statically. So here what I did again is I created a temporary string called selected RI item. I set its value to no. I pass in to the selected RL, which is the value I set on the radio button list for selected item data name. I pass that variable in. And when I move out of the save path, I use change value on selected RI item and loop back. So when I loop back, So this form is updating selected RI item and then looping back to itself and then using the updated value. This pattern will, I think, get you what you want. Right, and let's go to Mr. Jeff Humphrey here. Here we go. If I remove an unused column from a table referenced by a table integration, that table's not referencing any flows. Do I just need to resave the table integration, or must I also open resave all flows? It should just be the table integration itself, Jeff. Well, when we read that table schema in and then generate a defined data type for it. And then the flows are just asking for that defined data type during design time. So yes, if you have a table integration and the table and that table that you've integrated against has had a schema change, and that the column that you want to that has been removed is no longer relevant, no longer used, you should only need to edit the table integration itself. Go back through the sort of integration screens for the table integration, and click save, and it should propagate to all your flows. There should be no need for you to go through all your flows and make any modifications for that.
Cool, thanks.
If you're hitting something like that, that's almost certainly a bug.
Okay, no problem, Jeff. Just kind of double checking.
All right, any other questions from anyone today? And yeah, go ahead, Lisa. What do you got?
Hey, Will, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm having all types of technical difficulties this morning. No, I have a something we worked on overhauling with you guys recently back in April. We have a systems access review project, and basically we have supervisors accessing access records from a dashboard, and we have a group user action for approving and denying records.
Okay.
And for some reason, we've had close to 90% completion so far. I have one single user that's throwing a monkey wrench into all of this. She was able to approve 20 of 25 records. The last 5, she can select those on the dashboard, and the actions appear for her on the little pop-up menu. But when she clicks either the approve or deny action, nothing happens. The strangest thing.
And I think, do you know how these actions are created? Like, are they assignment actions? Are they the assignment actions we were walking through a minute ago, where they're like extra sort of group actions? Or are they assignment extension actions? There's a variety of ways for us to create actions on objects.
I think the answer to that is that they are group user actions.
And so they can click the button and it just doesn't appear that anything happens.
Right. What should happen is a dialog box should appear, and nothing happens. We set it up so that there's a thread job in the background that approves, that basically iterates through the list of selected records and writes a database through an API.
Yeah, it's hard to say. There could be some kind of error message getting thrown. This is probably the type of thing that we need like a support, one of our support people's help on. there's probably some kind of exception being thrown silently in the logs that'll point us to what the error is.
Okay, I have a ticket. I went ahead and put a ticket in,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, I'm not sure, just sort of conversationally what to look at, but there's likely some error that is just that either those assignments are in a bad state now for some reason, or there's some error after that occurs after you try it, which causes the downstream actions to not actually like fire off like you would expect, and then cause you not to because your workflow to behave incorrectly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't be more help on that one. I'm not sure.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Right. Anybody else got anything for us today? Sure. All right, Marcus got a question. Could you run through an example? Oh, here we go. Oh, sorry. Why doesn't decisions check through the default credential chain in AWS steps and just throws exception when global settings are not set? Why doesn't decisions check through the default credentials chain in AWS steps? I don't know the answer to that. I don't. Yeah, I don't no clue as to why we don't do that. I think some of our AWS steps are a bit kind of all over the place in terms of how they manage authentication. They do most expect you to have the authentication specified on the global settings object. I know that. I'm not entirely certain though why they're not behaving like you might think, or why you would expect them to. Marcus has got a question. An example of setting. Could you run through an example of setting up a REST method that passes out a user-defined type instead of JSON? Do we need to create a JSON data type to accomplish this? Yes. Yes, you do. So the steps would be, I pull this up and talk through it. REST integration. How to restart. Look at that. How to restart the decision application. Incredible stuff. Okay. Creating a REST method. So at a high level, what you're going to do is come to create data types integrations, external service, add REST service, and you're going to create your, master service here. And here you're going to give it like root URL. Like in this example, it might be like support.decisions.com/primary. And that creates a folder for you. And then inside of master service, I'm going to start adding methods, and this will be called, get users or something fake, right? And is going to be / get users or something. And this is where you specify your return at. So when you build this the first time, what I would do is specify raw value, and then go into my flow and then get the JSON that gets returned from excuse me, I'm sorry, let me get my thoughts together here. Build this, create the sort of root service method, build the actual method, the actual piece itself, because this thing right here is going to be what creates a step for you. I'm sorry, what does it say? No query string data type chosen. And then go build a flow here. What I would do is I'd come find that step. So I'd come into integration, REST services, master service, and I'd find my get user step. And then I would run this. And then in the debugger, I would copy the JSON that comes back, come back into my folder, create data types integration, XML JSON, create types from JSON, paste that JSON in here and give it a name. Once you have that, you can come back and edit this, and you would change it to select data type. And at that point, maybe edit my data type. And then I would select that data type I created. And then that will change. Now, when I use that step, I'll get the actual data type out. From the step instead of the actual JSON string. It's just kind of a shortcut to not to have to use a deserialized step after a REST step every time. You can just bind those two things together. Yeah, so build your integration, run it one time, copy the JSON, create a type from JSON, edit, go back to your data type, go back to your integration, edit it, and then select the data type instead of raw value as the step output type, and then select your data type. And at that point, now you'll get the actual data type. AWS can be set on the EC2 instances that decisions is running on. Yeah, but not that it shouldn't. The decisions application just doesn't have that level of insight into what it's running on. Not that I don't know if it can or can't. If it can, then it's meaningful that it could assume or sort of infer those things automatically. But it doesn't know. In a substantial way, decisions doesn't know where it's being hosted at. It's completely kind of agnostic to how it's being hosted. What is Amazon EC2 portal settings ID? And these are tough. Let me see. Let me install the AWS module. Oh, I have it installed. Look at that. Amazon Web Service settings, edit. Yet Amazon EC. Oh, that's just the ID of the settings object here. Like, if I were to edit this report and include ID, you'll just see it's just we have like a get folder ID or get flow ID or get rule ID. That's all it's doing. It's just the ID of that settings object. I don't think that it would be used for anything outside of decisions. It's just the decisions ID for that particular settings object. Okay, thanks everyone. That takes us to right up to 1 o'clock. I appreciate everyone joining today and asking such great questions. We will see you same time tomorrow.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks everyone. See ya.
Bye.